que we're in Ovesa.
And I have a motion to reconvene into open session for the August 11th, 2015 meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I can disclose that there were no votes in executive session. Can you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Healy, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Avanzato?
Here.
Mr. Glassbach?
Here.
Mrs. Clarkin?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. McGoffin?
Here.
Mrs. Held? No student representative tonight.
Mrs. Healy, can you please call the calendar?
On Tuesday, August 25th, 2015, there will be a school committee business meeting at 7 p.m. in the North Kingstown High School. Thursday, September 3rd, 2015, teachers and staff report to school. Tuesday, September 8th, 2015, school committee work session at 7 p.m. in the North Kingstown High School. And Tuesday, September 8th, 2015 is the first day of school for students.
Thank you. Since we don't have any presentations and recognitions, I'd like to move along to citizens' comments. I have one citizen who signed up, Michelle Green, Michael Green. Sorry about that.
Close. I heard the microphone's sensitive, so I'm not going to touch it. I'll stand back. Good evening. My name is Mike Green. My wife, Marissa, and I and family live at 197 Cassandra Lane in North Kingstown. Primarily here to speak on behalf of the hockey team, but I have several different comments I wanted to make. My oldest son will be a sophomore, and my daughter will be a freshman at NK High this year. My younger son is at Stony Lane. All three of our children play various sports and have all along through NK sports programs, football, lacrosse, volleyball, and all three play hockey. So I guess you could say I'm a sports crazy parent, not just a hockey crazy parent. My wife and I both attended public schools. We made the decision that our children attend public schools. We feel very strongly that our kids will receive an excellent education through NK Public Schools, as well as many wide variety of extracurricular activities, including the sports programs. My primary point of emphasis in speaking in front of the committee tonight is the fair and equitable treatment of all student athletes throughout the NK High, regardless of the sport that they play. The reality is that budget constraints are part of everyone's lives, both home, work, personal, corporate, school committee, town. That's reality. So I'm not here looking for the committee to reallocate funds from a different part of the budget and whatnot, or a one-time grant. What I'd like the school committee to do, or the athletic director, but take the time to reassess how the sports, or rather the athletic budget is spent overall across all sports. Take a look at how. Sorry, I lost myself here. There's look at different ways so that the money can be allocated across all the programs and fairly be dispersed amongst all teams, so that no one's eliminated. One possible solution might be allocating funds based on participation numbers. That's just one way, but regardless of how it's formalized, I don't think that any support should be eliminated solely based on the cost factor or other factors that preceded the decision to eliminate the sports. So I do want to pose a couple of questions to the committee. Both the town budget and the school committee budgets are transparent to the public, transparent to the community. I'd like the board to provide the citizens of North Kingstown with a transparent view and vision of what the athletic program budget is. what the numbers are, how it's spent, how it's allocated, so that we can look at real numbers and assess where we're at. If that breakdown, if that itemization of that budget, rather, the athletic program budget's not available, I'd like the committee to explain to the community how the rationale, or how the decision was made at the time to eliminate funding for which sports they eliminated it for. Second part of the question, second question actually is related to the business partnership that was established in 2012. Since its inception, the athletic program, it was instituted, I believe, to help assist in the funding or generate funding for the athletic programs. To my knowledge, the athletic programs haven't received any funding from directly the efforts of that position. I wanted to see if the committee could justify or provide justification as to why that position or that program was established through the athletic program budget, and why that number came from there versus elsewhere in the school committee budget. Coincidentally, the number that program is allocated at $35,000, I believe, would be probably about the same number, from what I understand, to resurrect the funding for the programs that were eliminated. That's pretty much all I had to say. I implore the committee to reassess the allocation of funds, the existing allocation of funds for the athletic program, and try and figure out a fair and equitable way to spread the money across and treat all the students fairly. I appreciate your time. Hopefully that parties that be will reassess and come to a good conclusion.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can we have the superintendent's report?
Thank you. I'd like to use my report tonight to invite Mr. Haig, our athletic director, to the stage to make a brief presentation to the committee, following up on a number of things that Mr. Green just brought up. This has been a conversation that we have had as a committee for some time now, and I'm eager to include Mr. Haig in the conversation. He has provided, and I have sent to you, a few pieces of information about, where the money goes for athletics and where we are in that process. And he's also got some options in terms of how we would move forward from here to address some of the concerns that Mr. Green talked about, and some that we've heard from other groups in the last few weeks and months. Do you have a handout?
In addition to what you already said.
Yes, in addition to that, so Mr. Jones was asking for some numbers and some different things. So
Yeah.
Good?
So the first piece that I had sent over, I believe about a week ago, just details out some of the ideas that we brainstormed over the summer on how to potentially bring back the sports, at least at the high school, and there's a piece there for middle school sports as well. So, if you had a chance to look at that, great. If not, I'll just kind of summarize it real quick. Basically we're looking at about $15,000 at the high school, and we're looking at about $20,000 for the middle school, for a total of about $35,000. So that's what we currently don't fund today. So where those numbers come from, it's about $12,500 for ice time for the hockey team. It's about $2,500 for the facility for gymnastics. At the middle school, currently, we don't pay for officials for wrestling, soccer, and track, although they're very minimal for track. We don't pay for buses for those sports, and we pay for some uniforms, but we haven't paid for any soccer uniforms at this point. To get some of those sports going, we've bought some safety gear for wrestling and some throwing equipment for the track team last year through some other avenues. So that's kind of what we, need to move forward with that plan. So, I detailed out kind of what we've done in the last 3 years with the money that we had. So, some of you haven't been around that long, nor have I, but this athletic budget was about $750,000 about 7 years ago, and it's cut down to about $500,000. In 3 years with the budget that we were given, we were able to add all those things back that I listed on the top of that page. So I just wanted to get you an idea of kind of how thin we're operating right now, based on some of the things we've moved around and cut back in some areas, and we're able to bring back, those things listed there. I believe at the end of last year, you guys voted to add $5,000, if that's still the case. So there's $5,000 of the money, which is accounted for in that form. I think I could make up the difference for the high school piece with the supplies budget and basically move those supplies over to our gate receipt budget and distribute some of the fundraising across all teams for uniforms, because that's one thing that kind of hits everybody about the same. Some uniforms are a little bit more money, some are less. It depends on how well the coaches take care of them or the kids wash them. So there's some incentive to make them last longer when the teams have a little bit of stake in actually purchasing new ones. So it's one thing, I know you guys have asked for officials numbers in transportation, but I don't try to look at, spending based on per pupil, spending based on, because if you want to really look at fair, you give each sport what they need. So, some sports require nothing for uniforms for 3 or 4 years. So if you look at their costs last year, they didn't spend much at all. But if you look at a sport coming up this year like track, we need to buy uniforms for them. It's going to be an expensive year for them. So you can't really look at on a cost per, we don't budget X amount per team every year. It's basically we have this much money and what does each team need. So even transportation, some sports don't travel at all or very little. And other sports like basketball, they require a lot of transportation because there's a lot of games. So the only real fair thing to adjust over everybody is uniforms. So if we take that $10,000 out of the supplies and I try and fund some with the gate receipt money and some via fundraising with the teams, I think we could do that. When you want to add the middle school piece back in, it becomes more difficult. So, one, I would need, I believe, permission to use the gate receipt money to spend with middle school, because I don't think we've ever done that in the past, at least I haven't. So we would need to be able to open that money up to spend on some middle school stuff. And then the other piece would be we would need some additional revenue. So I have some ideas down on there of how to create that, and make it more equitable. But I would kind of put it back at you guys with what do you want to do, because the more fundraising we want to put down on the teams, the more phone calls or parents are going to get your ear that why are we doing fundraising for uniforms, which we've gotten in the past. So, you're not going to make everybody happy with this formula. You're always going to have a group that's left out. The current group that's left out is more unfair than just kind of hitting everybody with a, 50% uniform fee. So, if your uniforms last 5 years and they're going to cost $4,000 in 5 years, you're going to have to come up with $2,000 to pay for those uniforms. And if we did that with all sports, it would be fairly fair. Some uniforms are pretty cheap, so you could argue that those sports make out better because they don't have to fundraise as much. But, I don't think there's a perfect formula for it, but that's a pretty fair way of doing it. Some of the other things I put down in there, the gate, the sports camp. We bring in a lot of money with sports camps this year. It's going to be about $25,000 to $26,000. But if you look at what we've already got allocated out of that money, of what the teams use that money for, there's only about 5 or 6 left. And a few of those things, aren't. That's how much it costs for a coach. Some of the teams may not have raised that full amount in sports camp. So, that $20,000 figure there might only be 18 because field hockey might not be able to come up with the full 26, 25 out of there. So sports camps, while they're, a great source of revenue, we've used them to bridge the gap of things that we've cut in the last 6 to 7 years. So we always had paid for 3 coaches with most of our sports, and we've cut most of those down to 2. The sports camps is a way that many coaches pay for that third or extra coach. You know, there's a lot of other little things that they use it for, but none of them are, you know, trips or things like that. One of the other piece that we were asked for was the activity accounts, which is the long table there. Those are the current balances at the end of last year. Boys lacrosse right now is 0. They ran a negative balance of about $70. They took a team trip to Pennsylvania to watch the NCAA Division I finals, and I just balanced their account with my athletic fund, which is some money that I get from the calendars the advertising calendars. So I put like $40 into their account, and that's why it's perfectly 0. It was actually negative. So, and the same thing with boys volleyball. So they do have some money because they collected some money from some kids, and they have a deposit, they told me, and they haven't given it to me yet. So it's not 0, but it's not thousands. They don't have a ton of money. Their sports camp account, they do have some money in there. They have a few $1,000s, which I know was the figure that you had asked for. So I would say total about $2,500 they have in discretionary income for this year. Step back a little. Let's see, what else is on those? The last thing that I know you had asked for last year was some kind of season pass. You know, one of my ideas there is to raise our gate revenue a little bit. So I'd like to put a $5 gate fee for basketball games and football. Part of that is, that's pretty much what everybody charges for boys basketball and football games, but I don't want it to look like we're just doing it because everybody's doing it. Those games cost a lot more to run. We have police that have to come in for them. We have a doctor on the sidelines at the football games. So I think it's justified that those games, you know, we don't need police at a girls' volleyball game. So, you know, I propose that we keep those less than that, and then those passes were created for families to buy like almost like a punch card type system. So hopefully the system I've come up with, you know, certainly we can talk about it or make changes, but it doesn't cut into the Booster Club revenue where they sell their gold pass, but at the same time it provides an option for a family that might just want to go to girls' soccer games or field hockey games, so it saves them a little bit of money. You know, I don't know that that's the right number down there. Again, we can have some feedback on that. I did put a little background on the sports camp program of just how it was created on there, because I know some of you are new with like this past year. Just the focus of it was, you know, what the main focus was to provide a low cost. Most camps cost $300-400. Ours cost about $120 to $180 depending on the camp. So that was really why we did it, and one of the reasons I don't want to completely rely on that money, or at least until those expenses are paid out of what the coaches use, is the coaches do that as a fundraiser, and I'm worried that if we took the money away from them, they're not going to run the camps. And not out of spite, it's just a lot of time out of their summer. They don't make a lot of money doing it, but they do it because it's kind of a win-win. The kids get a great camp, their kids get to work in the camp and make a little bit of money. Some of the coaches make a little bit of money, while at the same time they raise money for their program. So it works well, the formula. In fact, other districts have called us to copy our sports camp program because they like the model of it. So, you know, moving forward, I'd like to look at some of the other options rather than, you know, relying on that. One other thing is we don't charge gates at middle school games. I don't know. We're looking around the state to see how many people do that, but that's possibly a source of revenue towards helping fund the middle school. So that's kind of what I have for you guys right now. Certainly could take questions. I think those proposals, they require some additional money, but I think Mr. Jones has said, like, we could try it this year, see where we end up at the end of the year, make up, if there's a deficit, it's not going to be much, and see where we end up at the end of the year. And, you know, if we're a few thousand short, I'm sure we could cover it and run the gate receipt account really low for the year, and, you know, put off some of the major purchases that we have coming up with that. Questions?
One question I have is, I don't know if all teams fundraise. I know some do, some don't. Do you have any data or information on, you know, what teams have to fundraise and what percentage?
Sure.
that is?
They all fundraise somewhat. Some teams just, you know, it's more a culture of the team. They, you know, like our girls' tennis team, for example, they'll go out and they'll buy sweatshirts and sweatpants every year, but they just charge the kids. They don't do a fundraiser for it. So if the girls, a mom will get together with the kids and they'll get them together, they'll pick a sweatshirt, they'll pick something or a jacket, and they collect $60 from every kid, and they don't do any fundraising for it. Other teams, you know, bigger teams will, and tennis tends to be a little more affluent of a team. Other teams will say, look, there's a lot of kids that can't afford this, so we're going to do a fundraiser and get that cost down from $90 to $30 a kid for the same type of package, so to speak. Some coaches just, you know, I don't want to say they have more pride than other coaches, but some coaches want their teams to, you know, have nice gear, to all look the same, to walk in, so they put more value on fundraising than other programs. Other programs, we have some coaches that don't think that's such a big deal, and they're like, you know what, we're just here to, and this is just an example, like, we're just here to play tennis. We don't need sweatshirts and jackets and so on and so forth, and we have some coaches that do that. No one doesn't fundraise because they're getting the money from us, if that makes sense. So no one doesn't fundraise because they don't need to. They're getting all the nice shirts and this and that. We pay for, you know, the transportation, the officials, the coaches, and, you know, entry fees into some events, and, you know, within reason. And then outside of that, if a team wants to go to Massachusetts to play a game, they go fundraise for it. Other coaches might not care to go to Massachusetts and fundraise. You know, we go to Fitch, Connecticut, we play in Dodd Stadium, it costs us $300 or $400. The baseball team loves that. So they weren't raising $400 to go down and play in Dodd Stadium for the weekend. So I would say it varies. I don't have data of exactly how much each team fundraises, but I know the ones that don't just choose to because they don't see the value in their program. You know, and I think it's a balance. Some coaches might fundraise a little too much. Some probably don't do enough. Like, if you look at the balances on there, you can see which teams are real low right now. Like, if boys and girls volleyball, they're real low balances right now. One of the reasons is they rely heavily on their camps. So they have a lot of kids in this town that come to those camps, and they each raised about $3,000. So that's their fundraiser right there. But they don't go out and sell cookies or, you know, things like that. Field hockey only made $800 in their camp, so they sell cookie dough because they need to do an additional fundraiser because they don't get as many kids at their camp. So that's kind of the balance right now. I don't know that it's right. You know, it's not perfect, but it seems to work well. I don't get any complaints from coaches that say, man, the baseball team takes all the fundraising opportunities. We have nothing that we can go do. I've never heard that. So if people are saying that, they're not saying it to me. It's, you know, I think every coach knows, like, we have lots of different fundraising opportunities that we can do. So I even offer some out there, like, you know, someone will call me and say, hey, we need kids to work running a road race event. We'll give the team $1,000, and I put it out there. And some coaches sometimes don't take advantage of it because they don't feel like organizing 38 kids on a Saturday to go to a road race and make $1,000. You know, they just don't do it. Other coaches jump right on it, you know. So I think the opportunity is there.
What is sailing doing that they have almost $9,000 in their activity account?
So sailing, that's a little skewed. So sailing is a couple different scenarios. One is when it was started by two brothers that were excellent sailors, and their father agreed to be the coach for nothing. And that was how our sailing team, you know, was started. And then the school committee voted to pay for the coach, and that was it. And that's pretty much the case that we have now. It's not an interscholastic league sport, so it's almost more like a club here. It's not governed by the interscholastic league. It's not a sanctioned sport in the state. There's very few public schools that have sailing, so it's kind of a North Kingstown nice to have, and they realize that, and they've always agreed to fundraise for pretty much everything except that coach, which two people usually split the $3,000. So we don't pay a lot into the sailing program. You know, they do participate in Booster Club events, and the Booster Club gives them money. So that gives you a little history. And to answer your question, they sold a fleet of their boats that they had fundraised before for to the University of Connecticut's club sailing program. $6,000 was the fee. That's what $6,000 of that money just went in last week. In fact, if you ran a report right now, it doesn't show. I added it because I know I deposited the money. So that was $6,000. They went out and bought new boats with that, and that was part of that money is allocated towards the new sales and stuff like that for the new boats. So, but sailing, they do okay. You know,
do.
They do a huge yard sale down on the beach. A lot of parent involvement. They do a really nice job with their fundraising within their community. A lot of the yacht clubs donate money to us, so they run a nice program.
Thank you. Sheila?
Two questions. One is on the uniforms. Is there like a uniform policy or guidelines as to what kind of uniforms you should be buying, colors, and just, I don't know if the styles change so that we know that they're always tasteful, things like that?
Yeah. So first part of your question, we don't have a policy on what brand or anything like that to buy. So the policy is more, we don't, there are some uniforms that it pays to buy quality. So volleyball uniforms, we replaced the boys last year. They were 9 years old. So we had a really good quality uniform. It lasted 9 years. Track uniforms, just the nature of track, you don't want to go out and buy an $80 track singlet because, one, they look about the same as $50 or $40 singlets, and the track kids with the sweat and everything on the uniforms and they don't hold up no matter whether they're 40 or 80. So that's more the policy, is we use our brain as far as when to buy the good quality ones that are going to last 5 or 6 years and when to not. So as far as colors, soccer, some sports are very particular. White is home, black is away. Some sports where they don't have a home and away, we do gold only. So, that's as far as colors. As far as styles and tastefulness, there are a few sports that, maybe the girls' uniforms aren't as covered as they used to be back when I was in school. So, but we don't regulate that. But yeah, if you go around the state, everybody wears them. So, the track uniforms, the girls' volleyball uniforms are pretty revealing uniforms. So, but I don't say that they can't wear that stuff because it seems like everybody's wearing it.
And on the
Probably not great parental advice.
on the fundraising, are there fundraising guidelines for the teams, like what they can and should do and shouldn't do?
There are. We have fundraising guidelines. We also have fundraising limits. So we don't. They have to submit a fundraising proposal, and they submit it to me, and then we approve it or not approve it based on what we want to make sure that the kids aren't like going to random neighborhoods, and knocking on doors, that it's supervised, one, that it's non-intrusive, that we're not hitting businesses and homes that were just hit with a Booster Club fundraiser or something else. So we try to control that. We've put fundraising guidelines in place. I didn't do anything my first year. Second year, we put a couple little things in. This year, we actually have like a full list out of all the different things that you can and can't do. We have a new fundraising proposal form that they have to submit to me for signature with me and the principal. So, there are some guidelines with that. We're trying to make sure someone doesn't go out. We had an instance a few years ago where they went out and raised like $9,000 for a trip to Florida for all the kids. And, those trips are fun and they're great team building, but they ended up crushing a lot of businesses in the community that give to other fundraisers that are vital for all sports. So instead of sending 12 kids to Florida, which is what we ended up doing with some of this chunk of money, we could have used it for everything, because when we went for the Booster Club, they were like, sorry, we already gave. So we're trying to prevent stuff like that. Which is one of the risks of proposing to kind of spread that fundraising out, is now people are going to have to fundraise a little bit more. I also have some ideas like making some kids pay for part of their uniforms that they keep. So it's always been a little strange to me that we issue socks that kids keep, because now after 4 or 5 years, they've got 4 or 5 pairs of socks at $8 a piece, which, believe it or not, add up over time. So track shorts, from a hygiene perspective, we've talked about having the girls buy their shorts and keep them for 4 years rather than having the school buy them. So we're kind of transitioning to that. Golf shirts, the kids go golfing, we buy them golf shirts every year, but they keep the shirts. And, it's kind of like, it's not a lot of money, but if you add it all up, it becomes a fairly decent chunk. So we're going to start to say, okay, if a kid can't afford it, we'll pay for the uniform. But at the same time, if you want to keep it, you pay for it. We're looking into that even with safety equipment like football helmets and lacrosse helmets. One, they're expensive, but two, the number one way to prevent concussions is fit of a helmet, not the type. So there's all these star ratings and everything else, but the fit is the most important thing, how well it forms to your face. So, we can't buy 400 helmets to fit 100 kids. So we do our best to fit them with different size pads and everything, but there's nothing like a custom fit helmet that you can go buy. So a lot of parents are already doing that. I would say there's a dozen right now on our football team. So we're looking into possibly having kids buy their helmet and then maybe a buyback program where, I have to look into the liability of that, whether we refinish them at the end of the year, which is mandatory, or the kids do. So it's not quite as easy as it sounds, but those are all ways of making kids safer, saving the district some money, and, overall being kind of better for everybody, I guess, except for the parent writing the check for the helmet. But does that make sense?
Any other questions?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Mrs. Avanzato?
Well, more points rather than questions. I would personally, as long as you've spoken to the Booster Club and, numerous athletic parents, I would personally be for you coming to us maybe with some lists of things that you'd actually propose that we do, like raising the gate fees X amount. And, you talked about at the high school games, but you're going to explore the middle school because you're not sure about that.
Yeah.
As long as you think it would be tolerated and the games would still get the attendance, then I would be for it.
I think the goal is that our community parents don't pay any more than we used to. So, I put some season pass numbers on there. Maybe it should be $20. I put $25, but, if there's 8 games at $3 a game, that's $24. If we raise it to $4, that's $32. So there's, we could talk about that, but the goal is that our own parents don't pay any more than they used to, and that the out-of-district people that are coming here pay more. So, I don't want it to be like, sock it to East Greenwich when they come here, but that's what happens to us when we go to these places. So, and I know, you've been to a lot of sporting events, and parents always come back, why are we only charging $3 at these things? I just paid $5 at Charahoe. I just paid $5 here. So, but I don't want to, I want to make sure that our own community can go to these things as reasonable as possible, but at the same time be on par with what the state's doing.
I would agree, but maybe even a slight increase because everything goes up. Everything goes up.
Yeah.
If we could avoid having our community pay more and increase.
So that's kind of the goal, and Mr. Jones had suggested it with that season pass. And the concern I have there, and the booster, I had spoke with Chris Madoyan, and he wasn't, thrilled with the idea, of the season pass because he wants to make sure it doesn't cut into the booster club. And they're obviously such a vital part. That's my focus as well. So I think the numbers I put out there, based on what they charge, it won't, but the only way to do it is to try it and compare their membership with their membership a year ago and start polling people, and then we can address it if
I
it
would
becomes
also
an
say,
issue.
Increasing the sports camps, but I guess that's a decision that the sports camps make, and then they basically put the money in their own accounts and spend it on
Yeah,
coach or whatever.
one of the things we could look into is creating sport camps that aren't sport specific. So you could create camps that are, like our strength camp makes a lot of money, and the money goes to support the guy who runs our strength all year. But there's other things, like we could run a middle school strength camp. So it would be more plyometrics based and non-lifting. But, we did a big weight room renovation. In fact, I would suggest you guys walk out of here and check it out. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But we could do a middle school one and try and get younger kids in there and do more fitness-oriented things and find someone to run it, but then that money could all go into, so there's ways of doing it. It's just the way we've been doing it. I don't want to touch too much because it seems to work really well, but...
we tried to practice, we tried to get involved as a school committee years ago, and Mary Ann knows this, in painful detail with all the decisions, because there were some things happening that we didn't like. There was a lot of money being spent on certain uniforms and this and that. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It has to be based on common sense, and the uniforms lasting 9 years, 8-9 years, you're getting a huge
It does.
savings
There's a
from
big
that.
difference between a $30 soccer jersey and a $90 soccer jersey. But if they're white jerseys that are going to be stained from sliding and everything else, then the white jerseys aren't as important to be high quality as the black. You know what I mean? So because you're going to have to get rid of a white baseball jersey in 3 years, no matter whether it's the best quality or medium. Because barring holes in them, they're going to be filthy. They're brown by the end of the year, and you just can't wash that out. So
One more question, and then I'm going to let, you had mentioned wrestling, soccer, and track.
at the middle school.
You were saying no buses, no coaches. You didn't mean the high school, or?
No, just the middle school. So the big difference is we cut gymnastics and hockey at the high school. They were funded programs. Wrestling, track, I started their middle school wrestling program 12 years ago. So we had a Division I wrestling team here, or we wanted to become one, and I had gone to the school committee at that time and said, look, we can't do this. I need your permission to start this. And they said, fine, as long as it doesn't cost us anything, go do it. So we raised 20 grand. We bought 2 mats for each middle school. We got volunteer coaches, and that's how we went. Now, the only schools that had middle school wrestling were Division I schools. Now, almost everyone has it. Almost everyone has track. Almost everyone has soccer at the time. It was about half when we started our middle school soccer kind of adventure. And those were never funded programs. So you're kind of talking about two different things here. The hockey and gymnastics were, and then we took it away. Those have never been. So the decision is, do we want to make them whole now?
The goal, well, at least for me, would be to try to get to the point where we were, like we never took anything away.
Mm-hmm.
The add-ons are a later consideration, but that's just me, but I'll defer
Yep.
to anyone else.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to just thank Mr. Haig, and then, we'll get to it later today, but on the agenda, we're going to approve having you as a full-time person, so I think that's
Thanks.
long overdue.
My wife thanks.
And I think a good move for the district, so say congratulations in advance. A couple quick questions. I also want to, the point you made I thought was good, that you can look in the, I know it's in the agenda tonight, the reports that the administration adds, where you could see, the rough amount, like 500 and something thousand
Yep.
for the budget. I know it's a little difficult to decipher, but I think you make a good point that, that's gone down while our programs, if nothing else, have ramped up. And I think, it's good to point out the work that was done a couple of years ago between the administration and the teachers union to really work on coaches and club coordinators, where we were able to get to the point of having all, us fund all the coaches and fund all these co-curricular activities within the existing budget. So, I mean, that was a great work between the administration and the union and everyone to come to that point. On Ryle, quick question. I know when Dr. Kenworthy was the principal, we had a seat on that. I don't know if we've not been able to do that, because one of the things, Sheila, to address your point, is that, when Ryle makes a mandate, like home teams have to wear white, that's a cost that gets put on districts without, anybody having a say except those principals. So do we kind of have anybody, on that, except I know there's AD meetings and...
No, we don't. So basically, when a seat becomes vacant, Dr. Kenworthy's seat becomes vacant, it was filled before, we had the position. It doesn't automatically go to the new principal at the school. So Dr. Mansieri would have to file to put her name in to become part of the Principals Committee in Athletics, which is the governing body of the Interscholastic League. So Interscholastic League is kind of like the police, and they're the law. So they create the law, the Interscholastic League carries it out. So, it was great having him on there. It was one of the reasons he got himself on there, was to, be a stronger voice on some of these things. With that said, I'm getting more involved with the athletic director side, and I'm on several committees on that. But, until, maybe she gets grounded in this job, she can kind of, move into that as well. Dr. Kenworthy also has a sporting background, as far as he coached here, he coached at other schools, he coached football, and he was the director of girls lacrosse in the state. So he had those things before he even applied to be on that principals committee athletics. So hopefully we'll get there, but no, we don't have anyone right now.
And my point is more for the committee to understand that, there's this group out there that makes sometimes these policies that put a cost on us that we either have no say or limited say, except trying to keep abreast of what they're doing on that. So maybe I think there's an AD meeting coming up, so we can be told if there's any big changes coming further down the road. One thing to consider, I like the idea you mentioned of, because I don't think it would fit in pay for play or violate that, is families or students eventually owning their uniforms, and spreading that cost over proportional would be, I think, a great idea if we can do that. Would it be possible on Family ID simply to, even if a lot of people don't do it, just have a voluntary donation box?
It's coming. Right now, and the reason the season pass stuff isn't on there yet, it's a separate registration. So the package that we've purchased for Family ID for the middle schools here and the clubs, we're at a certain threshold. If we opened it up for season pass, it would cost us like another $1,000. So, because it would take us into the next tier of like 1,000 more registrations. So we're like right at the max. We're about 80 below it right now. They use last year's numbers for this year's pricing. So, but I've expressed that, and they've been really good about making changes to that program, and it is coming that we will be able to do that. It's just, it's not. Right now, it would be a separate registration for a donation, which unfortunately, you know, their model is a little screwy to do something like that. So,
Okay. Well, yeah, that, I mean, just, again, another source of
yeah.
thing. And I think, you know, it was brought up by Mr. Green in his comments, you know, to the extent we can down the road, and I know you've done a lot of work on this, that I don't think people realize, you know, finding us good values and finding us discounts and
Yep.
and scrounging kind of stuff, you know, maybe, you know, even more sponsorships or other stuff, you know, that if we can find an ability, you know, someone or something or somehow to leverage those, that would
We've
be.
asked the Booster Club for, you know, the score table at our games. So we've asked them to purchase us one of the video score clocks so you can scroll different messages. But the goal there is to find a season sponsor for every sport.
Right.
So, you know, go out to Citizens Bank and say, would you like to sponsor for $1,000 the boys basketball team or something like that. So we are heading down that route, you know. Same thing with scoreboards, you know, getting some more sponsorships up there.
On the sports camps, I mean, I agree with your point. I guess the one issue always is there's a few sports that by their nature get to do the sports camps, and
Yep.
there's others that don't. And then, you know, there's always, and I don't know, you know, they use our NKSD facilities or don't, but I mean, you know, usually most institutions charge an overhead
Yep.
regardless of the stuff that goes back into a general fund for either covering eventual maintenance, wear and tear costs, or other use. So, while I agree we don't want to sort of look at that as a kind of catch-all funding, because, I mean, I know they use it for a third coach or the video stuff or
Yeah.
some of that, but I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that most places charge overhead as part of
Sure.
running those enterprises, and whether it's 5% or 10%, you know, we should look at something like that being siphoned off,
Yeah.
you know, even if it's just into a capital reserve fund
Okay.
over time.
Yeah,
you know, I
that
think-
makes some sense.
I don't think that's an unreasonable point. I thank you for doing the work on the Family Pass. I guess, you know, I'm glad you talked with the Booster Club. I always sort of saw it as filling a niche. Like, it always makes more sense if you're going to be a multi-sport family to go with the Booster Club.
Yep.
You know, obviously you have to go with the Booster Club if you're interested in the scholarship and all the other benefits they offer. You know, this was sort of filling the void of, you know, like Linda, like you buy a gift certificate and some people use it and some don't. You know, it just, instead of nickel and diming them at the gate, you know, $25. And you know what, some people may only attend a couple games and you made out, and maybe some attend all 8 and they save a little. But, I mean, I do agree that, you know, it seems like $5, $6 is the norm at other places, and that this is a way we can keep our in-house
Costs
family
low.
costs down, but yet, you know, extract the premium from the visitors that other places do. It sort of makes sense to do that, as long as, again, it's not sort of cumbersome. Like, I would even say, like, forget the stamps, just say it's this cost and your name's on the list, and, you know, if it's a
The
little
only
bit
reason
of
I did the
subsidy.
stamp thing was, you know, let's say your husband and wife go, is it, you know, he's on the list or she's on the list, or is it both? So I figured if you did 8, then it doesn't matter who comes, they just stamp it as they go. But, you know,
I would see as a trial and just go, it's just a family thing, and see if, you know what, if, like, everyone starts showing up, then maybe it's not, you know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, leave it up to you, but I'm glad that we're exploring that option. I just sort of end on 2 points at the middle school. You know, I understand some of those were add-on stuff, but I think if you were starting over, you'd sort of look at some things and go, you know, one of the arguments with that was made in the past with hockey and gymnastics was, well, their facilities are not on here, and they're a little more, we can debate that, but I mean, there's a little more of that stuff. You know, I don't really see any difference between baseball, basketball, soccer, wrestling. They use the facilities on things, you know, and to sort of pick out a couple and go, you're uncompletely funded until we were able to pay for the coaches. You know, especially when we have robust youth programs that support all of those, and I see, you know, we paid for the backstops, we do all that, and I know I don't want to get in between us and the town and these programs, but I don't think it's unfair to start going at the middle school, you know, those sports that look all and feel the same in terms of using our stuff, they should be equally funded and sort of, you know,
I don't disagree. I mean, my point with that was the reason they're not right now isn't because we cut them, or just they weren't mainstream. Now soccer is probably the most popular sport in the town, you know, I mean, boys and girls. It's, you know, we got Ocean State has been huge, and North Kingstown, and we get the most kids try out, you know, at the high school. We're very competitive. So, you know, they're definitely mainstream now. So the decision, my point was more, I think I can cover hockey and gymnastics with the 5,000 and some shuffling. I can't cover the middle school without some kind of additional money, as much as I'd love to.
Right. And this is where I would, you know, hopefully the committee can talk about this, you know, soon, in next couple meetings, you know, is look at, I've always felt we should have a bridge year and cover that stuff, and then let, you know,
where we fall.
let you and the administration and others sort of figure out, okay, if that's not sustainable at the middle school, we can apportion, you know, the cost distribution a little different. In terms of that. Same with, you know, if we can do a little more with, at the high school level, like you mentioned.
That's why they pay you guys the big bucks.
Yeah, well, I feel like, you know, obviously, we need to hear from the administration over the next few weeks about all the other needs that may or may not have occurred in the district, or areas where we may have saved and we're doing better and all that. But, I mean, I would like, hopefully the committee can come back and do that and think of this as a bridge year, because I want to compliment you to say, you know, the stuff you provided us was excellent. What I think needs to happen is, you know, over this year, adding the other columns of, you know, what does it really take to run the sport minimally, right? And that's the decisions you all need to make. Like, does it really need a third coach? Does it need to do some of this? Because one of my concerns, and then adding a fourth column, which is you look at the activity account, and this is a balance. What it doesn't show is all the spending. And while I think it's great that lacrosse, and I don't mean to pick on lacrosse, but I think it's great lacrosse went to Pennsylvania and was able to do that, but they're doing that great stuff while we have other teams that are fundraising just to train. And, you know, that sort of gets in the point of going, you know, where's sort of the equity in that stuff? And I think, you know, we need the year to sort of look at, like you said, some of these initiatives you've got going. If some of these other ideas pan out, you know, getting with the coaches and the administration and sort of going, you know, here's the really great stuff you do, you want to keep, but it's the margin of excellence stuff you need to fundraise. Here's the stuff you fundraise for, but really should be general funded, and then sort of come during budget season and sort of go, now where does that sort of shake out, and what can we fund? And so I'm hoping the committee and the administration can look at where we stand in the next couple weeks or month and say there are 15, 20, 25,000 that we can bridge this year, and let you all figure it out over the year, but not have to deal with that as we go along. So I sort of taken up time, but I really appreciate the work that you and the coaches and everyone's been doing on that. Thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you. Are there any exemptions to the consent agenda?
I do.
Mr. Jones?
Yes. A1, C4, C5, and D5.
Mr. Glassberg?
C3, C6, and D9.
Any other exemptions? Can I have a motion to approve all other items on the consent agenda except A1, C3, C4, C5, C6, D5, and D9?
Second? Sorry.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
With the,
Mr. Jones?
yeah, with the chair's permission, I would like to start with C3 and move A1 as the last item in the exemption.
Okay. Mr. Jones, C3.
Well, that wasn't mine, it was the thing.
Oh, you did, okay, I know Mr. Blasberg
Yeah.
had 3. I thought you said 3
Well,
as
just go in
well.
order, except for,
Oh, yeah.
instead of going in order.
No, we'll go in
move-
order.
Yeah.
Mr. Blasberg.
So, I just want to mention, more for the benefit of the other members of the committee, this was one of the items, as you may recall, at our last meeting. There was a lot of discussion about what authority would be given to the administration to make expenditures during our July break. And it was left that certain expenditures would be able to be approved by the chair or vice chair. This was one that came up during that period of time, but Cheryl and I discussed it, and we felt that it wasn't urgent enough that we needed to take action on it at that time, and we wanted to give the rest of you folks an opportunity to comment on it if you had anything to say. So I just wanted to point that out.
I'll make a motion to approve C3.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Jones, you exempted C4.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve C4.
Second?
Thank you. My comment on this is just, and I discussed this with the administration, but just so we have it in open session, the other committees thing, that that a lot of these are new buses, and that we have clarification that when we purchase these new buses, there's the agreement that should we need to add technology or other items to the bus, that's incorporated in these approvals.
Mrs. Avanzado?
Just very briefly, I just wanted to thank the bus contractors and thank Mrs. King for all the work that went into this agreement and getting it right, so I think this is a good thing.
Mr. Blasberg?
Just what goes along with this is now that everyone has an understanding and we have some stability going forward, we're going to be seeing a nice increase to the modernity, if I could say that right, of the bus fleet, because we're going to see some new buses on the road.
We have a motion and a second right now.
Right. All those in favor of approving C4?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
You exempted C5.
Thank you, Ms. Clarkin. Motion to approve C5.
Second?
Thank you. I exempted this, I don't have any objection to it. I think it's just, sometimes people say, we spend money, or we spend, 15, 20,000 on some of these things, and not look at, well, thankfully, it's not a large number, but just to notice, and I appreciate that the administration provides some of the numbers behind this at the middle school and high school, just to see, even if it's 20, 30, 40, that we have students in our population who are in need of these kinds of services for the various reasons listed under that. And so, when sometimes people say, like, well, what does this money go for? It's important to know that we have students who need this kind of availability. I think it's been fairly stable. Ms. King can confirm that in terms of the pricing we've gotten, and I think we've generally gotten good feedback on the service we provided. So just wanted to, make that point in open session that there's a need for these services, and it's important.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Jones, C6?
No, that was,
Oh, was that you? I'm sorry, Mr. Blasberg.
So the reason I exempted this item, I had some questions just from looking at the proposal. I don't have any objection to the individual that is named here. It's just that in the RFP, it talks specifically that the service provider would submit a cost per exam, cost per dose on vaccinations, things like that. This is for the physician services. And I didn't see any of that backup documentation, and I didn't know if we have that information, so that was my concern.
If it's okay, I would like Dr. Pizzullo, who's in the back, to address this. Dr. Pizzullo, this is the school physician information that we have presented tonight. Oh, I just want you, Mr. Blasbog is just asking about how the services are going to be provided. And in the backup that was given for the school physician, it indicated that there was going to be a charge per service. So if you just want to explain to him how you are going to get that information.
I was in contact today with Ellen, the business manager for the medical office that we are contracting with, and she said that there are some services that will be not as expensive as folks think they are going to be. For example, she said they will get their vaccines free from the Department of Health. So vaccines for the meningitis shots are going to be free. The only thing they'll be charged for is to give the shot. The vaccine for the HVP, or HPV, okay, one of those. They get that vaccine free from Department of Health, so we are only going to be charged to give the inoculation. Many other services from their experiences, they have contract with Johnston, for example. The parents' insurance will pay, and there'll only be a few of the children that will need us to pay for it. They are anticipating a cap of about $4,000. They don't think they would go over that.
Is that annually?
Yes.
For the year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is there a schedule of rates, though? I mean, that's just what wasn't here. So a schedule of rates. So in this proposal, it says, for example, this physician would provide physical examinations for children in the district for the first time who didn't have them themselves, but it says the service provider will submit a cost per exam. So I just wanted to make sure we have that back.
Yes. I asked her for that information, and she's going to get back to me. She's going to give me a list of all the services that would be covered and what the potential cost would be. But she wanted me to understand very clearly that some of those costs are already going to be taken up by the students'
Insurance.
insurance, and some of them are minimized because they get the vaccines from the Department of Health. So she's going to be sending that to me, and Mary, as soon as I get that, I can certainly let you know. They did already approve the policies and procedures. The head nurse for the school department sent it to Dr. Wallach, and Dr. Wallach approved with no changes. So our policies and procedures that are in place have been approved by Dr. Wallach.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, we should. What the question was, I don't mean to hold this up. I just find it a little odd to be approving a schedule, contract for a schedule of services when we don't have a dollar amount on the services. I mean, so I don't know, Mrs. King, is this something that if we put off 2 weeks till we have that information is going to be a huge problem? Do we know?
Dr. Pizzullo, if this gets tabled for tonight's agenda, is that going to be a problem if it is approved in 2 weeks? Is it going to be a problem if the group tables this until the next meeting, which is August 25th? Is that going to be an issue for our nursing staff for any information they need from Dr. Wallach?
I don't think so, because I think Dr. Wallach and the agency will go ahead anyway. They know they're working with us. They're committed to working with us.
I would just prefer to see if you could follow up with them so that we could have the schedule that's, I mean, it's all laid out in the RFP what they should be giving us a schedule of. Yeah. I'd just be much more comfortable approving it with that information.
I can understand that.
Okay.
And I'm sure they can also.
Thank you. So with that in mind, I'd like to make a motion to table this item to the next meeting.
Do we have a motion and a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
D5.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve D5.
Second?
Thank you. I always say this, the John Buscardin thing, that, appreciate the administration, because I think the football season starts in 2 days. So I always appreciate the administration getting, has a list of names and everything's approved before the season starts. So I appreciate that. I guess we've gone back and forth on this, a few things, so I guess I'll just put it out there and say, maybe it's one of those ones, we put it out and we'll come back to again in the winter, but I know we sort of came to the agreement just to put non-general funds for the volunteers. I still would like to know, when we say non-general funds, if that's from a third party, if it's from fundraising, and we don't have to, talk more about it now or hold this up, but I still would like a little more clarity when we say non-general funds, exactly what the source of the funding is.
Can I answer you, Mr. Jones?
Yeah.
For the past 7 or 8 years, we've gone back
I
and forth
know.
and back. I mean, it's seriously, because first we had it was from, we called them a volunteer, but they weren't really a volunteer. And then it was a booster club, and then it really wasn't booster club. And the problem was, every committee wanted something different, and that's
Yeah.
why we came up with non-general fund. Mrs. Avanzano certainly can speak to that. So I think the committee needs to decide what they want on the agenda. We have to approve them,
Right.
because for insurance purposes, they have to be approved as a coach. But if you're not paying for it, you have to decide what you want it called.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I know I don't want to cut you off on it, if you want to say anything first.
I agree with you. I think it should say donated funds the way we have.
Well, and because, then you start getting, I know like the football coaches end up being fundraised and donated, and it shows up on the thing. I don't know if the soccer coach is paid by Friends of Middle School and just paid directly to the person. I think we should just, as a committee with the administration, just get clarity on, with the details, whether it's fine just to say non-general funds, but there's a little more detail. And I agree, we've come back and forth this a lot, so I'll just again say it's time for this committee to talk about some more, but not hold this up for tonight.
A motion to approve D5?
It's already.
It's already a motion, okay.
We had a motion and a first and a second.
So what are we calling them?
We're going to talk about it.
Oh, okay.
So all those in favor of approving D5?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. D9.
I just wanted to mention that this is, in a way, an indication of potential success in our full-day kindergarten program, in that we have a noticeable blip in enrollment in the kindergarten. It is resulting in the need for an additional teacher, but at the same time, I think that you can't expect it always to be spread evenly amongst the district, and we've had some contact from some concerns, at least I have, I think other members have, about some concerned parents about the class sizes and shuffling kids to what would not be the normal schools. So I think this is definitely one that we need to squeeze in and make work within the budget.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, thank you. No, I agree with Mr. Blasbach's comments, and to point out, and I think if you look at how we're funding this because of a reduction in our charter school out-of-payment lines, which I think was one of the arguments or points we made with the town council in advocating for full-day K, that we would be able to see a reduction in the charter school tuitions from that, which should, again, over time, with the students staying in the North Kingstown School District. So I will sort of take a little liberty to also add that I think we should, again, be wary, and I don't know why the newspapers don't pick up on this more. We see things like the Green School looking to double their expansion, yet you just see that a publication that listed the best school districts in the state, and 6 of the top 8 are in Washington County, including North Kingstown. And so, again, just the mind-boggling thing to say we're doubling expansion in a county which has 6 of the top 8 school districts. And again, for us, if that went through, that would be a cost, even a proportional thing, of $100,000 with absolutely no savings to lose 10 kids from the high school. And so when we talk about squeezing $30,000 to pay sports, there would be $100,000 that would go out the door with no savings. So it just continues to boggle my mind that high-performing districts are penalized, and I hope that the state is a little more transparent of this and trying to slide this expansion, which has been going on for 6 months, under the radar, and not even informing districts about some of these things. So it's sort of gone beyond the scope of that, but I would say I'm glad we're approving this. Hope it puts the parents' minds at ease. And I appreciate the superintendent and his staff's work with the administration and principals, to improve as best we can class size and keep families in the districts, of the schools for the neighborhoods they're in. So thank you for that.
Mrs. King, do you have anything to report? Oh, sorry. This is the last one. We have a motion and a second.
No.
All those in favor?
Not yet.
I don't think we have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we still have to go to A1.
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
So I will start by making a motion to approve A1 for the continuing homeschool students.
Second.
I have no discussion on that point, if anyone else does.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will make a motion then to deny the request for the new students, homeschool students on the list.
Ken? Mr. Blasberg?
I think I know why, and it jumped out at me as well, and we obviously can't use any names or information, but it's a question, because the difference here that I noticed is generally when we receive...
Could we have a second so we can discuss it? And then,
I thought we had one.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So, traditionally, I know that there are, the homeschool parents have very minimal reporting requirements to our district in order for us to approve these requests. This one jumped out at me as well, in that while it lists an address, and it lists a last name, and it lists a number of students, it does not give any other information. It doesn't tell what grades those students are in, doesn't give the names of those students, and I didn't know if that is sufficient for us to approve the request. And I'm guessing that's what Mr. Jones's concern is.
Yeah, my concern is simply, I think it's similar to your point about approving the physician contract without knowing all the details. I'm not comfortable saying to approve something where I don't even know. I assume it's two, but I mean, it'd be nice to know if it's two males, and not even asking for the first name, but it'd be nice to know their grade. We have a responsibility under the law for compulsory education. I think and I know our policy puts us at a little bit of odds in terms of, and that's maybe something the policy committee can look at, but our policy also says at the end of the term that they're supposed to provide the educational records to prove that. And again, what if this family chooses not to do that, if this is the thing? I'm just concerned that I would like to at least know that we're approving a, male child for second grade, instead of just this blanket family with telling us there's two who would have gone to this school.
Mrs. Avanzato?
Yeah, this is a pretty complicated legal issue. There's been a ton of litigation around this, and I believe that a lot of the litigation, that this is like skirting the line of several of the decisions, which families have been given permission that they don't have to give names, they don't even have to give grades. As I recall, last time I looked into this, I'm not 100% sure, we would need a legal opinion on it, but I don't want to create a huge legal issue with the Homeschooling Association.
So if I could respond, so the problem is our policy, as I see it. We have, in our policy, it says the letter of intent should go through the central office and provide the student's name, address, month, and year of birth, last grade completed, parent name, and contact information. Providing this information is voluntary. Doing so may afford homeschooling families opportunities to avail themselves of services provided by the district. If parents choose not to provide contact information or limited contact information, the school district cannot be held liable for failure to inform parents of the school-related events and important information that the North Kingstown School Department provides to parents on a regular basis. So, in my opinion, we need to either firm this up, or that's what the policy states.
If I could again, I wrote that policy with Kim, and we tailored it to the law. So I think we need to tailor the policy to the law. I don't know the state of the law right now, and I think we need Mary Ann's legal opinion on it. But last we looked, you were not required to give any of that information.
In the Rhode Island general law regarding compulsory attendance, which homeschooling falls under, there is no mention about contact information.
But could I ask Mary Ann to provide a legal opinion based on previous precedent of cases that have already been heard in various districts?
Mr. Jones and I spoke about this at the beginning of the meeting. Granted, the directory information is optional, but Mr. Jones is asking simply for a name.
And a grade, right? I mean, or at least a name.
But is there case law, Mary Ann? Is there case law?
Here, and this just came up tonight, so I haven't done any further research. We have stopped some homeschooling students in some districts this year for various reasons. If you want to simply go back and ask the parents for a name, let's just ask them. And if they say no, then decide what to do. But if they say yes, at least we have a name. We're not asking for a lot of information. The systems in the state track kids, so I would think that the state wants to know who these kids are, because they track the kids in private. In private schools, we don't get a name, but they're tracked as going to private schools. I think there needs to be some tracking. And why don't you just table it for tonight, let me get to the Department of Ed and say, can we require a name?
What is it we're approving if we approve it without a name?
We're just, it seems like we're just approving a family saying, I maybe have some kids, and I'm telling you, they're sort of...
Oh, no, that's not exactly the case. The letter is crafted specifically along the lines of our policy, and it basically states, we intend to homeschool our 2 children during the school year 2015-16. Goes into attendance, it goes into the courses, it goes into the year progress report and attendance at the end of the year, which we require. So it's specifically crafted to our policy.
And I'm just going to say again that we need to step carefully with this, because there's case law, and I don't think we need to stir up a hornet's nest, because what the National Homeschooling Association will do is they will come in and they will litigate in a district that does something where they've already won a case in another district where they didn't have to give the name. So let's put it on hold, let's table it, and we can look further into it as was suggested.
I will withdraw my motion.
Motion to table.
The motion to deny.
To deny. And I'll make a motion to table A1.
For the new.
For the new homeschooling, good point. For the new homeschooling requests, motion to table. All those in favor?
Second.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
I do see something, Mrs. Avanzano. I just am Googling something. It's from 2011. But it does say here that the Homeschool Legal Defense Association asked Charahoe to stop publishing the names.
That's different. No, that's different.
Okay.
I just would advise caution, because it sounds to me like they're preparing a test case. That's just my gut feeling when I'm looking at the item on the agenda, the way they're reluctant to provide the information. We just want to make sure we're on firm legal ground to do that. Thank you, Mrs. King.
Mrs. King?
That's different. That's a different issue. She's asking about 14.
No, I don't have anything to report on 14-15. We are wrapping up the year. It's still, we're just about finished doing that, working with the town. I am trying to get some dates from the town for the audit to begin, which should begin very soon, because the audit report is due to the Auditor General December 31st, and we want to be on time this year.
Mr. Jones, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. Under 5A, I'd like to again reiterate for the public that if you look at the end of, or near the end of the agenda packet, it does list, there is again the the Munis run that has that stuff that the administration provides, as well as the check register for, I think, the most recent month or 4-week period, and also the athletic budget and the cafeteria fund. And I do want to point out on the cafeteria fund that I know it's not completely audited, but the unofficial end-of-year results that shows a couple things. One is that in an era where we've seen, slightly declining enrollments and declining use of non-free and reduced lunch thing, that the non-free and reduced lunch revenues actually went up in the district, in the cafeteria fund, while our expenses went down by 1 or 2%. And so that yielded, again, waiting for the official, but an unofficial net of something like 60,000, is it, Mrs. King? On an $800,000 budget. And so, again, we talk about where 3 or 4 years ago we were talking about $200,000 having to be taken from the general fund. We're seeing now a $60,000 surplus that, can be reinvested into the fund without having to draw from other capital needs or other budgets. So I think that's a great testament to the administration, Mrs. King, obviously Trish Cawley, and all the folks who work in the food services, the principals, and everyone else. So, I mean, just a great job, and I wanted to point that out in the financial part.
Mrs. King, is there anything to report on the CIP or existing future bonds?
Yeah, actually, if I could take a few minutes. I know we're running late and going back into executive session, but I did want to update everybody on the major project that we have going on in this building right now, which is the heating ventilation system that we all know about. It is an incredibly complicated project. Delta Mechanical, the vendor, is doing a great job. We are on target for no issues for the AC to be functioning August 28th. Of course, there'll still be punch list items and still some items after that. I've attended several of the meetings, the project meetings, and they've run into some issues, which we knew we would. It's a very big building, but they're all things that we've been able to overcome, and it's going very well. Also, the lighting upgrades in the D building that you approved at the end of last session, those have been completed. That work just got wrapped up. My facilities supervisor and I are working with a URI outreach program that's funded through National Grid. They're going to be coming through our buildings next week and the week after, and they're basically going to be doing they fill out this template. It's called an asset scoring tool. And it's going to be able to help us identify further areas for energy conservation. So I'd have to say that National Grid has been a really, really good partner with the district in both providing on-bill financing and also these tools that these really great group of students at URI have put together and are helping us with. So that I'm really excited to see that information. And that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. King.
It's not an exemption, but I'll table it.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just wanted to make a motion to table policy D1. The reason is that in reviewing that policy, I realized that I have no problem whatsoever with the edits, but the red line that we have, the edits were actually not made to the most recent version of that policy. So if we were to approve what was submitted, we'd lose a round or two of amendments. So I know the administration's working on correcting that, and they'll resubmit it, and we'll have everything lined up. So we have a motion in a second.
All those in favor of tabling D1?
Aye.
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 Is there any discussion under new business?
Well, there's nothing listed, so.
Can I have a motion to recess open session and reconvene?
Sorry, something on B1, though. So,
7B1.
B1. Under reports?
Yes.
Mr. Blasberg.
So, just a quick question on B1, the disposal notification, Mrs. King. It notes that one of the disposal items is a stamp collection of some kind. Believe me. I don't want it. It's just, don't throw them away, stick them on an envelope. Stamps are always good,
Yeah, he
as silly
wants
as
it.
it
He
may
wants
be.
the
I
stamp
don't
collection.
want the stamp
That's
collection.
the forever stamps.
Donate it.
Or do something with them, but I just want to
Donate
make
to
sure
the
they're not
library.
getting tossed in the trash.
Get the money.
Okay.
That was all.
Ship them to Greg's house.
I don't
All
want
of a
them.
sudden, I'm not here anymore, and you hear that I won a jackpot, you'll know it was
One of
those.
those upside-down airplane stamps.
They'll be laughing after they find out it's worth millions and Greg has the collection.
That's right.
Can I have a motion to recess open session? So moved? I haven't finished it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know, I'm reminding
Would you stop?
Shut up.
Can I have a motion to recess open session and reconvene executive session pursuant to RIGL 42464?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Save it.
Please.